You are now listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS students. In this tutorial, we're going to look at mastering IELTS Speaking Part 3. Before we do this, let's just have a quick overview of the format. So as you know, Part 1, we have the introduction, brief questions. Then Part 2, we have the prompt card. And then in Part 3, we have the discussion. And this is where it's brought up a level. This is where the examiner is going to test you and really start probing and promoting the dialogue. So let's jump straight into it. Now, imagine we've just completed Part 2 and your topic was speaking about an object that was important to you and why it means so much. So you've spoken about a photograph of your late grandparents, and the photograph has a lot of sentimental value. Right, so we've got the picture. Okay, I'll just describe it. We've got the old man on the left, old lady on the right, and I've described this picture. I've probably gone into some detail, talking about how my granddad walked with a walking stick, that he was usually quite a smiling person who smiled a lot, usually quite jovial, quite happy, and my grandma was a little bit more serious. And in this picture, I kind of you can tell and almost infer the character of these, of my grandparents. Okay, by the way, this picture I'm describing is not is not a picture of my grandparents. It's just one that I found online. So anyway, I will have described this. I've gone into detail, maybe mentioned my feelings towards this picture. I would have probably contrasted some details as well, just so I can show the examiner I've got a high level when I'm describing things, and just to show the examiner as well, grammar structure contrast. So when we are in Part 3, we have to bear in mind that these questions are going to be broader, okay? That means that we're going to cover more angles and more topics. So we've just spoken about a photo, or in this case, something that was valuable to me, and we're talking about a photo. So if we go broader now, that means we can talk about not just the value of photos, but maybe the value of, the value of certain things in society, how people value things in society, the direction of society, and we're really looking for like general viewpoints, and the examiner wants to know your opinion, not to qualify you or to judge you, but they want to know your opinion, or better said, your ability to express an opinion. Now, they also want to generate a discussion, and as I said, these topics are much broader. It can be about modern society, change over time, culture, contemporary issues, how things have changed, all these kinds of issues. So I'll give you an example, a list of example questions. So how do we decide the value of a product? Does modern society appreciate possessions? How does a consumerist society impact the way we live? Hopefully, you'll be able to reply to all of these questions. Yeah. A brief example answers. How do we decide the value of a product? Well, we could put it on eBay, see how much the market wants to, how much the market would want to pay for such a product. What else could we do? Well, we could say value depends on a lot of different factors. We could say something might have personal value, sentimental value. Also, value is derived by the utility it provides. And also, just to state an economic rule, that the more of a product or item that we have, usually the less we value it. So if I've got maybe, 3,000 Bluetooth speakers, having 3,001, that extra single Bluetooth speaker isn't going to be that much value to me because I've already got 3,000. So there, as I said before, it was like a complex thought that I managed to express, hopefully, rather eloquently and clearly, without stuttering, without going backwards, without making grammatical mistakes. And we don't need to go for extremely complex answers, but we do need to give full-bodied answers that answer the question asked. Let's move on. So, what are the examiners looking for? They're looking for your ability to speak in more detail about your topic from part 2. So I went a bit off topic there. I talked about Bluetooth speakers. But the ability the question, as we said, was kind of more broad. So how do we decide the value of a product? It was a bit more broader. It was still related to the photo. And yeah, I didn't go really off topic because the topic was value. And I went into quite a lot of detail there. So the skills being tested, your ability to express your opinion, ability to speak spontaneously and coherently. And I think in my example, it was coherent. I wasn't contradicting myself. I gave an example there to demonstrate my point. It was all spontaneous, and I expressed my opinion as well, and also slightly academic opinion by stating an economic rule of supply and demand. I mean, if you can, why not? So another example answer is, well, here we've got a poor example answer. If I said, possessions that are important to us are valuable. Now that is rather basic. And if you give an answer like that, you are making the examiner work. And we don't want to do that. As I mentioned before, we want to go for spontaneous answers. Spontaneous answers that show your opinion, perhaps contrast different items, different points of view, your personal opinion, not just a general one-sentence statement. So here I've got another answer. We could say, in my mind, there are many factors to consider. Firstly, there are different definitions of value. My photograph has no monetary value, but it's still valuable to me. Okay, so they're probably slightly better structured than my initial example. That's just because I had the luxury of writing it out beforehand. If we just deconstruct this answer, we notice that I used firstly as like a pointer. Okay, that just gives the answer a little bit more structure. And as I mentioned, we can use our opinions. And the way we give our opinions is we use different phrases like, in my opinion, I believe, or for me, some people say X, but I believe Y, or I think Y. I'm sure. You see, so we've got different ways to give your opinion. And I would get into the habit of using these in your general everyday spoken English. If you get more comfortable using them, when you do use them on exam day, it's going to sound much more natural and much more spontaneous, and that is what we're going for. So as I said, don't just use a couple of like one or two phrases. I think this, I think. No, let's use a variety, show the examiner we've got a strong grammatical range and accuracy, and also an extensive lexical resource. Let's move on. So as I said, we structure a good answer. This means, as I said, we use firstly, then we say additionally, and then words like this. Also, just as we do when we're building our essay, if we want to make a second point in our essay, we might say furthermore, in addition. Be careful though, words like furthermore and in addition, usually more for written English. But the point I want to make is that we build up the structure. Also, when we're giving our answer, we're going to offer different points of views, as I said. So we could say, on the one hand, I do understand why people value material possessions. However, I find it a little bit materialistic, and I prefer to value things that aren't as easy to monetize, such as experiences with my family and friends or days out in the countryside. For me, quality time is probably a more valuable currency or a more valuable aspect than material possessions. So you can see there, I give my personal opinion, I do some contrasts, and I've used that structure on the one hand, but on the other hand. Let's move on. So, as I said before, how can we get the high score? Well, we're going to be spontaneous, and we're going to let the answers flow, and we're not going to repeat memorized texts, because it's usually quite easy to spot when somebody's repeating something memorized. Right then. So, as I said, some phrases are useful. It's not harmful to memorize phrases, especially if you have practiced with them and you've started incorporating them into your own natural language patterns. So this is exactly what I was saying before. Experiment with these phrases, use them in a normal conversation beforehand a few times, get to grips with them, turn them around, and just adopt it, So we can say, I'm not sure, or if you need some more time to answer, you can say, that's a difficult question to answer. I think the concept of value is a very personal question. It's a very personal issue. Something that is valuable to me could be worthless to you. See, the more times I answer this question, I think the better it's getting, my answer. So, practice with your topic cards and just practice complex questions as well. So other phrases we could use. That's a difficult question to answer, or I haven't thought about that before. I guess the concept of value is largely dependent on each specific person or each individual person. For example, my uncle really values car badges, but personally, I never found any attraction in those. But he just loves finding VW car badges, Ford car badges, and he's got a big collection of them. So I guess to answer your question, it's rather a personal issue on how we value objects, especially material ones. There we go, just getting better and better. So, more ideas on how to score high. Well, we can show off our structures. Okay, this goes back to what I was saying before. We're going to use comparisons, and we're also going to use a large range of vocabulary. So, some of the other structures that we can use, we can say the conditionals. We can use the conditional. So something like, if I was younger, maybe possessions wouldn't be so important to me. But nowadays, I seem to find myself pandering to material items much more often. Just an example there. Varied tenses as well. So going back to the photo, I could say, before I was given that picture, I didn't think photos were valuable at all. However, nowadays, I carry multiple pictures in my wallet of loved ones. So I got the different tenses there as well. That's a good way to vary or to show contrast, and also another contrast at the end. However, my wallet is full of photos now. Some more structures. So don't just speak in the present and the past simple. So there's 12 tenses in the English language. Let's try and use them. Don't obviously use them all. But we could use a passive tense as well. We say the photograph was given to me by my auntie. Yeah? And we could even say something about the future. We say, now that I have this photo, I'll probably start printing new photos from my digital collection, and probably, probably this month I'll start making a physical photo album. I guess it's a relic from the past, but there's something to say about having a physical item in your hand, especially in this new virtual environment we find ourselves heading into. You can see, so I'm quite enjoying this question. So final tips. Let's see. Keep your answers short. They don't have to be so philosophical as I was just mentioning there. But there's no harm in being thoughtful in there, giving your own opinion. Just to recap, use those structures. Structure your answer. Firstly, therefore, firstly, then, also, like we do when we're building a decent essay. Also allow discussion. Okay, this isn't a monologue. So try and relax, be natural, and think of it like a job interview, if that helps. And go in there with that level of English. Don't go in there as relaxed as though you were talking to your friends, but go in there, smile, sit up straight. If you're physically confident, the study shows that you're going to be more confident, sort of like mentally more confident as well. These are all just little issues, little things that we can do to strengthen our case when it comes to exam day. And also just remember, this is your moment to shine. Your moment to shine and to show the examiner your ability. Also, use those different tenses, the conditional, the passes, the contrasts, using the different tenses, and I'm pretty certain you'll have a good exam. Now then, why don't you try and jot down some answers or even practice with a friend? Hopefully I've given you some ideas about possible answers. So maybe you could ask a friend, how does a consumerist society impact the way we live? How would you answer that if you were just given that topic? Also, do we appreciate possessions less than our parents did? These are kind of issues and topics that we need to get familiar with. Materialism, consumerism, environmentalism, all these kind of like movements in this century, especially in this decade, we need to get familiar with, because they're going to help us with the writing topics and also the speaking topics, especially for part 3 when we go broader. Now, some final points. Self-assessment. Okay? You've probably heard this a million times, but there's no harm in recording yourself, reviewing it, checking how many times you say, okay, like I do. You might say okay a million times every sentence. But when you're reviewing your work, you might want to look for structuring phrases. Did you vary your tenses? Just being more aware. Did you use some of the best structures you could have done? Did you sound natural or did you sound tight and formal? These are just different points we can look at when we're evaluating our own English. Now, when we are preparing, obviously, it's good to speak as much as possible. So go to those language exchanges, try and meet with friends who allow you to talk. Don't just go to the friends that just bombard you. Go for where it's balanced discussion, maybe join a debating club. Actually, I had a student once in Spain and I told him to go to England. That was the best thing he could do to improve his English. Go to England and don't do an intensive language school course. Go there, go to England, go to Manchester, go to the north or south, wherever you prefer, and join some of the local clubs there. So they might have a club, a walking club. They might have a club beer tasting. They might have a badminton club. Doesn't matter, just go there. You'll probably find a large percentage of native English speakers, and with them you can mix and you can talk and you can just integrate. Rather than going to the intensive language school, which is just going to bombard you with grammar, and you're going to be surrounded by non-native English speakers. So that was my tip. Anyway, so talk as much as possible, listen and respond in English as much as possible. Think of as many different topics as you can, and practice giving answers. Also, watch the news, read the newspaper, listen to the radio. This goes back to what I was saying before, just getting familiar with these topics, especially recent topics. So if you're looking for speaking topics and practice speaking cards, remember you can go to IELTS Podcast, sign up for the newsletter, and there's the whole ebook archive, which is a big ebook full of IELTS materials that's really useful and valuable for you, and it's completely free. And also you can what was I going to say now? Sorry. Also, yeah, you can just get used to the topics, do your practice answers. But I think a really good tip is to fill your head up with content from the BBC, bbc.co.uk, Guardian, theguardian.com, sort of like up-to-date issues that are affecting modern society. Dive into those issues, get familiar with them, and then when you can talk about them, and when it comes to exam day, you're not scrambling for an answer. It'll be top of mind. Hopefully you'll have read an article about it a few days ago, and the answer will just flow. Okay, so my name is Ben Worthington. If you need more help, and if you're in a hurry to pass, have a look at the online course at IELTSPodcast.com, and all the best with your IELTS preparation. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.